And we are live. Welcome to the Total Fitness Bodybuilding video chat. My name is Lee Hayward, and today we are going to be having a live Q&A where I'll be hanging out here for the next hour answering questions and topics of discussion that you have related to fitness and nutrition, any specific challenges you may be dealing with when it comes to your nutrition, when it comes to your workouts, when it comes to building muscle, losing fat, and getting in your best shape. We're going to be discussing those questions and topics of discussion today during our video chat. So as you're popping onto the live stream, please introduce yourself. So just want to heads up now, we're doing a live stream from both the Total Fitness Bodybuilding YouTube channel as well as the Total Fitness Bodybuilding Facebook page. So wherever you're tuning in from, be it Facebook or YouTube, you're more than welcome to participate. On YouTube, there's going to be a live chat window to the side of the video. On Facebook, you can type into the comment section, and it'll be popping up on my end here. So please introduce yourself, and let's get ready to take it away. So who do we have joining in? I see AJ is joining in. Welcome. We have Robert joining in, a couple regulars to our show. Glad to have you joining back again. And if you're brand new, let me know. It's always nice to have new people joining into our video chat as well. And we have Lee joining in as well. Awesome. Good stuff. And it is coming through loud and clear. Appreciate it. Appreciate it. Loud and clear. Good stuff. Good stuff. Awesome. All right. Good stuff. All right. So as you're chiming in and typing in your questions and topics of discussion, I just want to give you a heads up that this coming Wednesday, November 27th, I'm going to be doing a live masterclass showing you how to achieve a lean body recomposition. And the idea of this is to prepare you for the holiday season, because here we are now, we're entering into the danger zone. And we actually talked about this during the Total Fitness Bodybuilding podcast that launched yesterday, the most recent episode. So if you haven't had a chance to chime in and check that one out, I would highly recommend it, because it was a great action-packed episode. We're covering a lot of stuff that's going to really help you when it comes to the holiday season, as well as, I mean, it still applies to other holidays, not just the Christmas holidays and Thanksgiving holiday season, but you could apply this to holidays such as going on vacation holidays, or birthdays, or anniversaries, or anytime you're going out to family dinners and social get-togethers and eating out in restaurants and those type of situations where you're out of your normal element and you're not in control of the food. How do you make the best of those situations? How can you make it good enough and good enough consistently so that you're not setting yourself back? Because this is the danger zone where a lot of people are going to be approaching into the holiday season now. And it's so easy to say, I got so much stuff coming up. I'm so busy. We got Thanksgiving coming up now next week. We got Christmas holidays, and there's all kinds of Christmas parties coming up. And it's just so much, screw it. I'm not even going to bother trying to follow any type of eating plan or healthy diet, or, I don't even have time to go to the gym anymore. I'll start again in January. I'll get in shape in January. And that whole turning it off approach over the holidays, like, I'm just going to turn off my fitness and nutrition over the holidays and I'll turn it back on in January again. The problem with that is you don't just stay the same. Like, if you would just stop exercising and you stop eating healthy, it's not like you can press the pause button and I'm just going to stay where I am right now. No, when you don't focus on making conscious progress, you're falling behind. We're moving either way. We're moving forward or we're moving behind. Moving forward or falling behind, I should say. So if you're not focusing on improving your health and fitness, you're slowly falling behind. And just to kind of prove my point, if any of you are watching this right now and you've got a few extra pounds on, or maybe a lot of extra pounds on, depending on you and your situation, you just didn't maintain your way to becoming overweight and out of shape, right? That's something that slowly crept up over the course of months or years, or maybe in some case even decades, of not prioritizing your health and fitness, or at least not prioritizing enough. And it's almost like a balancing act, right? Like, if you're making more good choices, you'll make progress. If you're making more bad choices, you're going to fall behind. And we need to find, how can we balance it out so we're making more good choices than bad, so that you're constantly moving forward. And that's what we're going to really dive into in the masterclass, the Lean Body Recomp Masterclass that I'm going to be hosting next Wednesday. And we did touch on some of that in the most recent episode of the Total Fitness Bodybuilding podcast as well. So if you haven't registered for that yet, I've been sharing it in my sending emails out about it, so you've probably seen it there. I also been posting about it on Facebook. For those of you who follow us over on the Total Fitness Bodybuilding Facebook group. But I just want to give you a heads up where it is. It's right here. I'm going to share my screen so you can see that. Just give me a second there. Share screen, share screen. I want to share it, Facebook tab right there. This is the one I was talking about, the Lean Body Recomp Masterclass right there. All right, that's the one. Actually, I'm going to make that a wee bit bigger. All right, wee bit bigger. There we are. So that's going to be coming up now on Wednesday, November 27th, right? And the link, if you want to check that out, I'm going to just grab the actual registration link there and post it into our chat window. So you're definitely invited to join the masterclass, and I'm going to copy that into our chat window. So if you haven't registered yet, there are still spaces available. This is going to be a live webinar where you can tune in, and we're going to lay out a step-by-step action plan on how you can achieve a lean body recomposition, which basically means losing body fat while building lean muscle in the process. So losing fat mass and filling out your frame with lean mass. And we're going to be laying out a step-by-step action plan that you can follow to not only survive the holidays, but to set yourself up on the right track for the New Year's so that you're ahead of the game when January rolls around. You're already advancing in your fitness goals. You're ahead of the game, and you're not starting from a setback, which is what most people are going to be. Like, quite honestly, let's be honest. Like, most people are going to go through the holiday season, pack on another 5 pounds or more. And then in January, they're not starting from where they are now. They're starting 5+ pounds heavier. And now they got to try and lose that extra weight just to get back to where they were before, when they probably weren't happy with their fitness to begin with. So we don't want to be setting ourselves back. We want to focus on slowly making progress and moving forward. So I just sent a comment there, a notification, which will be posted up there into the chat. And the link for the masterclass is there. So you can go register for that. And if for some reason it's not showing up there, then you can just drop me an email and I will send you the link as well. I'm going to post it up there in the show notes after this show is over. So the link to the masterclass will be there. All right, so stop sharing that. Let's jump into your questions, because I see we got several people posting in some questions and topics there. Who else we got joining in? All right, we got Rob is joining in as well. Welcome, Rob. Glad to have you joining us this evening or today, whatever time it is in your neck of the woods. For me, it's getting close to this evening. It's dark outside. Well, it gets dark early this time of year anyway, so it feels later than it is. We have a question here, a random question. What are some foods that you simply despise? Despise. Let's see. What are some food? I certain junk foods that I just do not, that I just simply do not like. That have no purpose. Like, there's some foods out there, I mean, they might be not good foods, but hey, I still enjoy them because they taste good, or you can make a justification for them from time to time. But some things that I absolutely just don't like. One thing in particular, licorice, candy, that kind of stuff. I have never desired it, even as a kid. Like, that stuff that I just did not like. Right, that's one thing that I don't know. I don't know if it's despise is the right word, but I just didn't like it. Right, those are ones that stand out in my mind for sure. As far as like real foods, in terms of like your natural unprocessed foods, your meats, your fish, your chickens, your protein foods, and your fruits and vegetables and all that kind of stuff, and whole grains, and I mean all that kind of things, and rice and pasta and potatoes and oatmeal, I mean real natural unprocessed foods. I mean, there's really nothing there that I can say that I don't like. Some stuff that I prefer more than others, but as far as foods that I just do not like at all, the ones hands down would probably be candy and sweets and stuff like that. It's just, it doesn't do anything for me. I do not have a craving for that whatsoever. And something that I definitely despise, I don't know if we consider it a food, but I'm not a fan of alcohol consumption. Never really was, and I have not drank alcohol in quite a while. It's been since 2011, the last time I had an alcoholic drink, and I have no intentions of ever going back to it. All right, we got Brian joining in. He says, please tell me how bad energy drinks are, like Red Bull, C4, and your thoughts on this new mushroom coffee. Ever since I heard processed foods eat 25% of your testosterone, I eliminated eating for 3 weeks now. I need to stop energy drinks. Please help. Energy drinks. It depends on the situation. I will just move that down there a bit. I will sometimes have an energy drink in moderation if I really need it. And I kind of classify energy drinks and pre-workouts into the same category. I mean, yeah, they do work in the short term. And what I mean by short term is if you're not used to having them and you don't consume them very frequently, if you have it, you will feel that burst or surge of energy. You know, you will get that mental pick me up. You'll have the stimulant effect from the caffeine and all the other, you know, amino acids and things that are in them, the taurine and the triazine and God knows whatever else, depending on the brand and the type of pre-workout or energy drink. So it will certainly give you a pick-me-up. But the problem with that is it's so easy to then start using that on a regular basis. And what happens then is the so-called energy that you feel initially now becomes like your new maintenance. And a lot of people get to the point where they're consuming energy drinks or pre-workouts or things of that nature. And it's not necessarily an energy boost. They just need that to get up to maintenance energy to do anything at all. Like I know a lot of people who just don't function unless they're loaded up on caffeine. Like even just to get their ass out of bed in the morning or just to go to work or to do day-to-day stuff, not even high intensity workout type stuff, but just to get through the day, they got to be pounding back caffeine or energy drinks or whatever. So when it gets to that point, it's not an energy booster anymore. It's like this is replacing your natural energy. And the way I always like to view caffeine and energy drinks and pre-workouts and stuff is you're not really creating energy, you're borrowing energy. So you're borrowing energy from the future and having it now, but then once that caffeine and stimulants wear off, you're going to have a massive crash. So a lot of times I've seen people who've come off caffeine entirely, and once their body gets used to it, they don't go through the ups and downs and the spikes, but they'll probably have more stable energy throughout the day. And that's not necessarily a bad thing either. That's something that's quite advantageous, actually, to have that stable energy. But with energy drinks, sometimes it is nice to peak it for when you need it. For example, like if you're going to be doing a really hard workout or a competition, like a sporting event or something like that, and you want to ensure that you have that little bit of extra oomph in the tank to exert 100% effort, then they can be advantageous. Like I'll give you an example. Like sometimes I've taken energy drinks or pre-workout or something like that before a bicycle race, you know, because I want to perform my best. But this is like once every, you know, it's not a regular occurrence. It's like once every blue moon or a few times a year, I'm going to have this to make sure that I'm on my game. And I find that it helps in those situations. And I've tried this to know how my body responds to it. And I find that it actually can give me a little bit of an extra edge. But it's not something that I want to do on a regular basis. Like I do not consume energy drinks or pre-workouts. I find for the most of them, I find they're overkill. I find it's actually too much stimulation. So I try to, you know, keep it to the bare minimum and save it for when you really need it. Right. So I kind of have that attitude to it. Now I know some people say, hey, it's all bad, never consume it. And if you want to go that route, there's nothing wrong with that either. I don't see any problem with it. But from an athletic sports performance point of view, there is a time and a place where it can give you a marginal gains edge. And I think like in a competition setting or somewhere like that, it can give you that little boost. So that's when I'll save it. But for the most part, it's very rare that I'll ever consume energy drinks or things of that nature. As far as mushroom coffee, I've heard of it. I know, you know, I've heard talk of it and that, but I've never tried it. So I eat mushrooms in terms of like mushrooms and onions, or I'll use mushrooms as a garnish on my food or cook with them or something, but I'm not into, you know, psychedelic mushrooms or any of that stuff. So I have no experience with mushroom coffee or you know, mushrooms 2.0, if you will. What else? Okay, there we go. So that's my 2 cents worth on that. Any other questions? Let's see what we got coming through. We've got Rob's got a question saying, Lee, guys in the gym have told me about pro hormones. I don't believe anything guys say, but what's your input on them? Pro hormones were very popular back in, oh, geez, when was it? Early 2000s ish, like late 90s, early 2000s range. That's when this was kind of hitting the market. And the idea was they weren't actual hormones per se that like a testosterone, for example, or similar type hormones, but they converted to hormones when it was processed into your system. So it is a pro hormone. It's like the beginning of creating those hormones. So it's not a bottle of testosterone, but if you consume this, it's going to help your body to produce testosterone or get converted to testosterone when it gets absorbed into your body. So that was the whole idea of it. And it was kind of like this gray area supplement to like bridge the legality gap, I guess you will, of hormones and what could be sold as supplements. So there was a gray area for a while where people were using pro hormones to help to elevate their hormones from a like a PED type of thing, but it was from a legal point of view because it's not the actual hormone itself, it is a pro hormone. It was getting through the cracks in terms of the legality of selling it as a supplement. So the whole market, it was a real fad for a while, the pro hormone craze, like late 90s, early 2000s and stuff like that. And then some of the rules changed, and then they started saying, well, this pro hormone is technically classified as an anabolic substance, so a lot of them got banned. And I know some supplement stores that were still selling them when that rule changed or the laws changed even got accused of selling anabolics, right? You're selling, illegal anabolics in your store, blah, blah, blah. And some people, there was a bit of a gray area over that. But that's bottom line what pro hormones are. It's not the actual hormone itself, but it's a precursor to the creating that hormone. And it's a very gray area because, you know, there's a lot of things that could be considered pro hormones, and that's it's a sketchy area for sure. If you are going to go down that route, I mean, like personally, I wouldn't recommend it, but if you are going to go down that route, you want to definitely do your homework on it, like this, to know what in the hell you're consuming, because it's such a gray area, and a lot of times that stuff is kind of in the underground gray area market, if you will, right? Approach with caution. That's my word of advice right there, or don't approach at all. Let's see. Let's see what else we got. John's joining in. He says, can I get enough quality protein with plant-based products? The label shows complete amino acid profile, but guys say I need meat or milk amino. What do you think? All right, that's a loaded question there. From my personal experience, a while back, this was, when was it? Years ago now, about 10 years ago, my wife and I tried going vegan, and we did it for about a year, because this was back in the days when a lot of the pro vegan documentaries started popping up on Netflix and places like that. And they make a darn good argument, right? They try and sell like, oh, the reason why everybody is suffering health problems, and the reason why everyone's overweight, and the reason why the world is in shambles and all that is because of that pesky old animal protein. If you just cut out that pesky old animal protein, everybody's going to be great. So we said, you know what? Let's give it a try. Let's just, who knows? Maybe they're on to something. So let's give it a try. So we tried it for a while. And initially, I got to say, I didn't really feel any downsides to it initially. But after a while, like I'm talking like after several weeks and then after several months, what I started to notice is I was losing weight, but I wasn't getting leaner. And it just, even though I was consuming a lot of calories and I was consuming a lot of carbohydrates and trying my best to consume a lot of protein in forms of plant-based protein and even supplementing with plant-based protein, my workouts, I could tell they were suffering. Like I just didn't get the same pump in the gym. I didn't feel the same level of muscle fullness. And it was kind of weird. Like even though I was eating a lot of carbs, I felt flat. I felt depleted. And I just didn't have the same, it didn't feel good for me. And after a while, I said, well, we're doing this vegan thing. I said, what if we go vegetarian? We add in some, dairy and egg back into our diet. So, and then included with that, I also had like whey protein. So I started having whey protein, cottage cheese, Greek yogurt, and having some eggs. Started to feel a bit better. I said, well, I started to feel a bit fuller, a bit stronger. My workouts were better. I said, well, what if we go pescatarian? So in addition to having the dairy and the eggs, we'll also add in some fish. Added in some fish with our meals then as well. I started to feel even better. So I had more strength, more energy, more fullness. And I said, well, I'm just going to go back to eating a well-balanced diet, well-balanced in terms of protein and veggies. And then I felt my best. So it was a good learning curve because I realized that the benefit of a plant-based diet isn't so much the lack of meat, but the abundance of vegetables. That was the big aha moment. Because initially when we went vegan, I'll be honest, like our diet up until that point wasn't squeaky clean. Like it could have been better. But because we started going with more vegetables and more unprocessed plant-based foods, it did improve the quality of the diet. But then once I started adding in the protein afterwards, so I was eating protein and veggies, and then I felt the best and I performed the best, and I felt like I got the best bang for my buck in terms of the workouts and the recovery in that. So I'm not a fan of a vegan diet. Now, I know if you go Google searching, there's going to be some people who swear, oh, vegan diets are wonderful. And if that's the case, then more power to them. I'm not like, if somebody's following it and they're loving it and getting great results with it, I'm not going to knock it. But personally, I'm not a fan of it. And when you look at most high-level athletes in general, they tend to eat a well-balanced diet, generally across the board. Like I don't know of a vegetarian or a vegan Mr. Olympia, or top level athlete. Very, very rare. I mean, there might be some. Sometimes in the endurance world, surprisingly, you'll see some vegan and vegetarian athletes do well in the endurance world. But in the strength and power sports, they're quite rare. Now, I know there's the vegan strongman guy. I can't remember his name now off the top of my head, but who's done quite well. But like that's like a unicorn, right? Like that's the exception, not the rule. Generally speaking, vegan diets are not necessarily the best over the long term for most people, right? So it's something you want to try and experiment with yourself. Like I tried it, I gave it an honest shot. I tried it for a full year, and I really wanted to make it work, right? I really did, and I just said it's not working. Like you have to call a spade, and I just said this is not working for me. So when I started adding in the animal protein back in, I felt a lot better, felt stronger, and now I'm an advocate of protein and veggies, animal protein and veggies. Now, with that being said, does that mean I don't consume plant-based protein? No, of course not. I'll still consume plant-based protein, and I think it still all adds to your totals. Like, I mean, if you're getting protein from whatever, like the protein you get from your vegetables or from chickpeas or beans and lentils and breads and whatever. I mean, oatmeal's got, if you look at the serving on oatmeal, like there's 4 or 5 grams of oatmeal, or 4 or 5 grams of protein in a cup of oatmeal or something like that. So it all counts towards your daily total, but I wouldn't rely on that. I'd still want to try and get a good chunk of my daily protein intake from animal-based protein foods from a quality perspective and just a strength and athletic performance perspective as well. Now, with that being said, if you are going to go the whole vegan plant-based route, you're going to have to supplement. I really don't think you can get enough protein, like a gram of protein per pound of body weight per day from plant-based foods alone. That's going to be freaking hard, right? So I think if you're going to go the vegan route, then you're going to need to look into some vegan protein supplements. And that's come a long way. Like they have improved. So yeah, you can certainly get in some good ones. I would even recommend supplementing with creatine and supplementing with like essential amino acids and things like that to make sure that you're covering all those needs, because that's going to be the weak link in the chain, if you will, is trying to meet that. It's so much easier to do it when you're eating a well-balanced diet, but when you cut out an entire food group, it doesn't make it better. It makes it worse. Like it's so much harder to meet optimal nutrition requirements when you're cutting out an entire food group, right? So I'm an advocate of well-balanced nutrition across the board, right? It's like going into a fight with one arm tied behind your back, right? You're not giving yourself the best advantage by cutting things out. But that's my personal opinion. And again, I'm sure there's other people who probably have a totally opposite opinion and think I'm full of shit. And if that's the case, so be it. But I'm just sharing what I've experienced by trying a vegan diet and not making it work. Right. I mean, I've honestly did give it a good effort, and I spot the books. Like, I've got vegan athlete books, and I studied everything that I could try and get my hands on about vegan athletes. And, it wasn't the same. I got to say, it just wasn't the same. Anyway, what else we got there? Do you have any bad habits? If so, what are they? Loving the fitness stuff, but it's also cool to get to know you. Bad habits. Okay, well, I don't drink, I don't smoke, so don't do recreational drugs. Bad habits. When I was younger, I did smoke. When I was in junior high, I tried smoking, and when I was younger, I did drink for a while. But I learned from those habits, and it was actually fitness that got me out of those habits, thankfully. But I don't know. I have bad habits, I guess, like a lot of people. Sometimes I sleep in, sometimes I procrastinate in doing things that I should do. But overall, I try to be good enough, but good enough consistently. Okay? I mean, I will indulge and eat too much from time to time, or if I'm feeling extra tired or extra lazy, sometimes I don't make it to the gym every day. Right? I'll be honest, there's those days do sneak in, but because I'm doing more good habits in terms of fitness and nutrition and trying to live a healthy lifestyle, I think I'm able to keep moving forward versus falling off the rails. And again, it's like that balancing act, right? Sure, there's going to be some bad habits, like, hey, sometimes we're going to go out to dinner and I'm going to order dessert, or I'm going to have a slice of pizza, or we're going to go out for ice cream in the summertime, or, I'm going to fall off the rails with my eating and nutrition habits from time to time. But as soon as I get that craving out of my system, then I always start back again, try to get back on track. So yeah, there are bad habits in there for sure, but I try to overcompensate with having more good habits than bad. And that's a good way to approach health and fitness in general. Instead of having that all or nothing approach, trying to, how can we manage it? How can we still enjoy ourselves and make progress? And that's basically what we cover within the whole Muscle After 40 program that we have. And it's a lot of that stuff is what we're going to be covering as well in that masterclass that I'm going to be hosting next week as well. Like, how can you make it work so you can still enjoy real world situations and things that are important from a personal, family, or cultural aspect, but maybe not necessarily be good from a fitness aspect. Right? Like, prime example, I mean, like overindulging in a family dinner, like Thanksgiving. If you overindulge, and of course, if you eat or drink things that you shouldn't be, that could be considered a bad habit. But if it's done in the spirit of connecting with family and friends, and it's a tradition and something that you really enjoy, how do you make that work, right? How can you balance it so you still enjoy the not so good habit, if you will, but make it work so that you're able to achieve your fitness goals in the process? All right, what else we got there? We have another question coming through from, Zulio says, Lee, today I did the dumbbell leg workout and the gladiator workout yesterday, old videos back in 2014. They were harder than I thought, maybe. I don't know what G-than is, but maybe it means harder than I thought. But yeah, I remember those videos. Oh, another follow-up question here. Let's see. I did the dumbbell leg workout and the gladiator workout from 2014. They were harder than I thought, especially the push-up rotation, up and down plank burn, and the abs. Yeah, I should share those again or redo them again, because those were good home workouts for sure. And it's amazing what you can do with minimal equipment, or in some cases, like no equipment at all, and still get a kick-ass workout. Like, a lot of people say, well, I don't have access to a gym, or I don't have much equipment, and it's amazing what you can do. Right? Like, I've seen some of my coaching students and some of the guys, in the Total Fitness Bodybuilding group, and that showing workouts that they do with minimal equipment and working out from home, or maybe going to like a fitness park or somewhere like that, setting up a set of TRX straps or gymnastic rings in a fitness park and just doing calisthenics, different body weight variations and stuff like that, maybe some resistance bands. but you can still get in an amazing workout with minimal equipment. And that was the whole idea behind those, is to show variations that people could do. And I find those videos, that type of stuff, really, really gets good response. So I should start doing more of them. I mean, personally, I like going to the gym. I like the atmosphere. I like the variety of the equipment, but it doesn't always mean that a gym workout is better than a home workout. It's really what are you willing to do, right? Because sometimes if you put in the work and you're doing the right exercises, you can have a body weight workout that is way the heck harder than a gym workout using machines. All right. Here's a good question. John's asking, wondering, does the cold weather make you out of breath more working out? And I got to say, I believe it does, especially if you're outside in the cold. Like, prime example, in the summertime, when I'm doing, like, when I'm going for bike rides in the summertime, I will have more energy, more stamina, and be able to push myself harder than when I do so in the wintertime. I'll notice a significant difference. And I bet anybody who lives in a climate where it gets, hot summers and cold winters, and you train outside, you're going to notice the difference. Or if you train in an unheated garage, for example, like in the summertime, the garage is like a sauna, and in the wintertime it's like a freezer. You'll feel the difference. You'll notice the difference, and your body has to adapt to it. But absolutely, I think it is harder to train in the cold than it is in the warm. And there's a fine line behind that as well, because if you live in extreme heat, where like it's you're talking like 100 plus degrees Fahrenheit, or you're pushing 40 plus degrees Celsius, training in that kind of heat is going to be hard as well, because your body has to exert so much more energy to cool itself off. And on the other extreme, when you're training in like cold, just above freezing temperatures, or maybe even in sub-freezing temperatures, especially if you're outside doing cardio or whatever, your body has to exert so much more energy to warm itself up. And then breathing in that cold air, I mean, it hits your lungs differently. I mean, you can feel it. So I believe that the cold weather does have an impact, as well as extremely hot weather. The ideal is right in the middle, that good enough, and like the Goldilocks rule, right? We don't want it too hot. We don't want it too cold. We want it just right in the middle. That would be the ideal. But when you're outside that ideal, you're going to be exerting more energy, and it's going to be harder. All right, let's see what else we got there. Corbin's joining in here saying, glad your hand is better. Thanks for sharing. Yeah, for those of you who have been following along, I had carpal tunnel surgery a couple weeks ago now, or when was this? Anyway, a while back, maybe more than a couple weeks. I've lost count, but it's getting better every day, and I'm actually able to do light workouts in the gym. Like I'm curling 15-pound dumbbells, right? Woohoo! And able to do like certain rowing and pulling exercises. I find pulling is not so bad. The only thing that really hurts is pressing. I got to be careful because I have the incision right there in my hand. So putting pressure on that, especially the lower palm area, hurts. Like I can't do a push-up. I can't have my palms flat on the floor to do a push-up. It's just too painful. But I can sometimes do some exercises where I hold the handles higher in my hand above the incision. So like, for example, I was doing some pec deck flies today, again, with moderate weights, but as long as I hold the handle high in my hand away from the incision, it doesn't cause pain. So I'm working around it the best I can, doing exercises like that, even sometimes using the machines with light weights and holding the handle a bit higher than it should be from a practical point of view, but it allows me to still work around it and kind of rehab the injury. And that's where I'm in that. Well, it's not an injury, rehab the surgery, I should say. But I'm in that process, and it's surprising. It's getting stronger every day. Like I can notice myself able to do more and more every single day. Like this time last week, I couldn't even like pick up my gym bag or twist the doorknob open, and now I can. I can pick up my gym bag, no problem. I can twist the doorknob and, open the door. Where last week that was causing a lot of pain. So every single day I'm noticing it getting stronger and stronger. And like when I started, I remember, within a week or so after the surgery, I tried curling the little pink 3-pound dumbbells, and it's like, oh, well, that hurts. And then finally I could curl them little 3-pound suckers, no problem. And then I worked up to the 5s, and then eventually up to the 10s, and now I'm up to the 15s. So boom, progressive overload, right? From an injury rehab, or I call it an injury, from surgery rehab, right? But it's amazing how fast it is bouncing back. And I'm sure within the next, I'm estimating probably give me another three months or so, I should be back to normal workouts again. Yeah. But again, thanks for your concern. All right, where else we got there? We got Iceman. Thoughts on 3 to 5 milligrams of creatine daily? Helpful. Well, I'm going to clarify the dosage. It's not milligrams, it's grams. Big difference. If you took 3 to 5 milligrams, you wouldn't notice anything. That's right. Grams. It's 3 to 5 grams. And actually, I would push it up to the 5-gram mark. And you could even go a little more than that if you wanted to, but it's probably not going to make a big difference. But there's been a lot of research done on creatine. In fact, it's the most researched supplement out there. And I find, like, in my situation where I'm in the fitness industry and I've been supplementing with creatine personally since it first came mainstream. Like, I remember the first time I took creatine was back in 1995, and I've been using it ever since. So for me, creatine is nothing new. Like, it's almost like brushing my teeth, like it's just, hey, everybody should be on this. Everybody's taking this, aren't they? But I'm still having conversations with people who are, hey, should I start taking creatine? I'm like, man, I've been taking that for, a long time. I've been taking it since the mid 90s, 95 is when I started. But for a lot of people, I mean, this is a brand new thing, right? And they're still debating it and researching it and trying to do their homework and weigh the pros and cons and all that. Well, creatine is the most researched supplement out there, and there's virtually no downsides to it. Like, there's a lot of positives, and the only downside is it may cause some stomach upset, especially if you're not used to it or if you have a sensitive stomach. And that usually comes about if you take too much. So the problem with creatine, the way it was originally promoted and endorsed, and even nowadays some people still recommend this, is that whole idea of a loading phase, right? Where you're taking 20 to 30 grams of creatine a day for the first week, and then you taper it down to 5 grams afterwards. The problem with that is if you've never consumed it and then all of a sudden you start boat loading like 20, 30 grams of creatine a day, it could cause a lot of stomach upset. And one of the effects of creatine is it pulls water into the cells, so it creates this cell volumization. So a lot of people find that uncomfortable, going from nothing to this extreme change. Whereas if you just built it up gradually, like start with maintenance dose right from the start, 5 grams a day, and then just let your body gradually accustom to that over time, you'd still over the long term get the same benefits, but without that stomach irritation and discomfort, right? Because you're just gradually conditioning your body to taking the creatine. So you're not going to get that big dump in your system, that big load, if you will, but you'll still, over time, you'll top up your body's creatine levels and still reap the results of it. So that's what I recommend, like, to all my coaching students, if they're asking about creatine, in fact, I do recommend all my coaching students to take it, unless they have some sort of medical condition that are advised by their doctor not to. But for the most part, creatine is safe and healthy for virtually everybody. But I do recommend it, 5 grams a day. And it really doesn't matter when you take it. Like, it's not a timed supplement. It's not something that, like, you have to take it before the workout or after the workout or whatever. As long as it's in your system, you're going to reap the benefits of it. It's kind of like taking your multivitamin. Like, it doesn't matter if you take it in the morning, noon, or night. As long as you take it consistently and it gets absorbed into your system, it's going to work. Same with creatine. It's not a timed supplement. It's not like a caffeine or a pre-workout energy drink where you have to take it before the workout in order to get the benefit. Like, nobody would take their pre-workout energy drink after the workout is over, because, like, what do I want to be stimulated after I've already done my workout? That doesn't make any sense. Creatine's not like that. Like, it's not a time supplement where you have to take it before or after or whatever. For me, I usually just take it in the morning when I take my vitamins. Right. That's how I take it. Like, when I'm taking my vitamins in the morning after breakfast, I'll just down 5 grams of creatine along with it. But yeah, it is helpful. It's not a mind-blowing, like, oh my God, this is amazing, but it does give you a slight edge, right? It will help with the recovery. It will help you to have more strength and energy. It also has mental and cognitive benefits. So especially as people get older, it has benefits from a cognition point of view and helping to prevent mental illnesses like Parkinson's and Alzheimer's and dementia. Like, it has some positive benefits in those areas. Again, it's not miraculous, like it's not a cure for Parkinson's or a cure for anything, but it can help slow down any mental decline as you age. And so it gives you that, it's like a proactive supplement, if you will. So there's a lot of health benefits to it. It's also been shown to help improve bone density. Like, there were some studies done on older women with relatively high doses of creatine. I think the study was like 20 grams a day for older women to see if it helped improve bone density. And it actually did show to be, there was some positive signs with bone density, but there was better signs when it comes to like mental health and helping to maintain muscle and help to improve strength and energy, those things. So creatine, by all means, I do recommend it. I do use it personally, and it is helpful. And the nice thing about it is it's not that expensive, right? Like, you can buy a big, huge container of creatine for relatively inexpensive. I know the costs have kind of gone up and down in recent years with supplements, so I'm not sure what the current going rate is off the top of my head, but it's not as expensive as it used to be. Like, I remember the first time I bought creatine back in 1995, I bought a 100-gram jar, which was tiny, 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 like so small. And it was 100 grams for $100, literally $1 a gram for creatine. That's how much I paid for it back in 1995. So nowadays, like, you can get 1,000 grams of creatine for probably like $50 or less. So it's a fraction of what it used to be back in the day, because it's more mainstream now. So yeah, you can use it. And again, 5 grams a day, like that 1,000-gram container of creatine is going to last a long time. Right. So I see no reason why you shouldn't use it. I mean, I've been using it, and most of my coaching students are. Right. If you use creatine, hey, chime in the chat window. Let us know, right, what your feedback is. All right, we got Neil joining in, saying, just wondering, how do you breathe when deadlifting? Is it okay to breathe, then brace, pick the weight, exhale, then breathe, then brace, lower the weight, slowly repeat? This is what I do. It depends on the number of reps you're doing and how you're doing those reps. If you're doing low reps, I would actually recommend take a deep breath just before you go to lift. So take a deep breath, pull that into your core, tighten up your core, your stomach, breathe into your belly. Like, there's 2 types of breathing. There's chest breathing and belly breathing. Breathe into your belly, like expand your stomach. This isn't a time to suck in your gut. This is a time you actually want to expand your belly, breathe into it. And that will also draw your weightlifting belt tight if you are wearing a belt, and just create a better solid core. And if you're doing low reps, breathe in. I would actually hold the air in, do the repetition, and then as you fully lock it out, then you can breathe and then lower the weight down after that. So for a single rep, like, you can even watch powerlifters do this. Like, you just type in YouTube and watch like a powerlifting deadlift, something like that. That's generally how they'll do it. They'll take a deep breath right before they lift, hold the air in as they're lifting, and then when they lock it out, that's when they can breathe. Like, the weight is locked out at the top, then you blow out, and take another gulp of air, and then do your next repetition. Or if it's the case of powerlifting, it's only 1 repetition, so you put the weight down after your single rep. If you're doing multiple reps with lighter weight, then you kind of got to get into some sort of rhythm. And generally, the way it works for that is, as you're exerting, you're going to breathe out. As you're lowering, you tend to breathe in. Now, there can be a little bit of compromise here, especially with deadlifts and squats, where there's such big exercises. You might want to do your breathing when you're locked out in between reps. So, prime example, like when you lock out that weight at the top, then you might want to then do another rep. Like, do your breathing at the top. It's hard to breathe in and out when you're actually exerting under max load like that. Like, for example, when I'm doing squats, especially if I'm doing heavy lower rep squats, I'm going to breathe when I'm locked out at the top. So before I start the lift, I'll take a deep breath, pull it into my belly, hold that air in, squat down. As I'm squatting up with the weight, I'll probably exhale, and then at the top, lock out, then hold it in, do another rep. So I'll do most of the breathing in between reps at the top when the weight is locked out. If it's a lighter weight and you're doing higher reps, you might be able to get into that cadence of breathing out as you lift and breathing in as you lower, right? Getting into that cadence. Exhale as you lift. Inhale as you lower. That's the general cadence, but it will vary from exercise to exercise. Right? And the best thing to do is to try it. Try different variations and see what you feel best with, what works the best for you. Because these are some general guidelines and suggestions, but everyone's unique. Everyone's probably going to find their own personal style and rhythm of what works the best for you. And that may change as you become more advanced, right? Like I've noticed certain things like technique shifts as I become more advanced have changed. Breathing tempo and technique changes as well. But that's a good general guideline. And it's something that most people don't even pay attention to, right? Like a lot of people either breathe haphazardly or they hold their breath during the exercise, so you want to learn how to get into that good structured breathing rhythm based on the exercise and based on the exertion level that you're doing. All right, what else we got there? Rob is saying thank you. You're welcome, my friend. Duncan is offering crying. All right. Sorry if you're sad. Who else we got there? Lee is joining in saying, I listened to the latest episode of the podcast today. The two guys on the podcast, I found their health stories very powerful. It was a great listen hearing how they've got healthy. Awesome. Appreciate your feedback. And again, just the guys he's referring to are a couple of my coaching students who are going through the Muscle After 40 program. We had Paul Miller and Richard Porter. Both of these guys are in their 60s. Both of them have lost over 100 pounds, right? So they've made amazing transformations. Paul started his journey at age 62 after having a heart attack. Prior to that, he was not exercising, totally neglected his health and fitness. And around that time, at his peak, I think Paul was around 260 at his heaviest. And now he's in the best shape of his life at 70 years old. So, I mean, at 70, he's now at the best shape of his life. And he recently got down to 140 pounds. And he's going to be doing a physique competition very soon. A Masters physique competition or bodybuilding competition at 70 years of age, which I think is really cool. So, I mean, I'm looking forward to sharing that and as he's going through that process. But he's down to 140 pounds. So he's dieted down, the leanest that he's ever been, and also still quite strong. Because during that conversation we had there, at 140 pounds at 70 years old, he deadlifted 320 pounds. So that's more than double body weight deadlift at 70 years old, which is just like, and you only started working out at 62. Like, that's just goes to show you can still build muscle. You can still get stronger, in your 60s and beyond, right? Paul's a prime example of that. The other guest that we had on was Richard Porter. Richard went through a lot of challenges. I mean, he was really heavy. At his heaviest, he was 400 plus pounds and so heavy that he had trouble just doing day-to-day stuff. Like, couldn't walk up and down the stairs, couldn't even walk across his house without getting out of wind. Like, he literally strategically had chairs and benches set up through his house. So he'd, get out of his bedroom and then walk out to the hallway and have to sit down, take a rest. Once he got his wind back, then okay, he could walk out to the kitchen, sit down and take a rest. Like, that's how limited he was with his mobility at one point. But now he's after losing well over 100 pounds. He's down into around the 250 pound range now, and going to the gym on a regular basis, out, able to do yard work and be active. He even this past year, he bought himself a bicycle for the first time since he was a child. And now he goes bike riding. I mean, and he's doing that in his 60s. So, like, he totally made a life-changing transformation from being, very obese to the point where it was limiting his life and mobility and just couldn't even walk up and down the stairs or walk across the house, to now living life without having his body holding him back from doing what he wants to do. And two of those guys joined me on the podcast, and it was very powerful to hear their stories. So again, if you haven't checked it out, go back and check it out. It's the most recent podcast there, right? It's the one where we talk about avoiding, the holiday weight gain, right? And they shared their experiences, and some of the strategies that they're implementing. So very practical, very powerful stuff for sure. But thanks for sharing that feedback, Lee. Much appreciated. Sula saying, is 47 years old with women's physical issues too late to start on a fitness journey? Well, I don't know what women's physical issues are, but is it too late? I would say no. I just shared a couple of examples of guys who started in their 60s. And we actually had this conversation with them. I asked Paul, like I say, he started at 62 after having a heart attack, after almost dying from a heart attack. So like he had his brush with death, and that was his wake up call that, you know what, I can't keep going down the path that I'm going down. I can't keep neglecting my health and fitness, or I'm not going to be here anymore. Right? Like I have to make a change. It's now or never. It's do or die, literally. So I would consider that some physical issues for sure. Again, I don't know what your physical issues are, but I'm just sharing an example. That was Paul's start. He started from rock bottom, and now in his 60s made a life-changing transformation and is literally in the best shape of his life now at 70 years old, which is exciting. And I know I had a conversation with Paul during our last coaching call together, and I said, imagine if you could have started in your 40s, or, even if you could have started in your 50s, like where would you be now? And he said that was like one of the most exciting questions, because he's like, where would he be? Like, considering how far he's come starting in his 60s. So my answer to you is, you're 47, start now. You're never going to be as young as you are right now. And if you don't start now, then, you'll be in your 50s and then wondering, well, what if I started back when I was in my 40s? Or you'll be in your 60s and then wondering, well, what if I started back then? Start now. Like, don't debate it. Like, oh, am I too old? Did I miss the boat? Poor me. Ask yourself, like, how long do you plan to be on this earth? Right? Like, are you planning on being around for a few more years? Hopefully you are. Make the most of those years. Like, live every day to the fullest. I mean, let's just say the average age for a woman these days, I don't know, what's the average age for women? I think it's around 80 years old. Men is a bit lower. Men are in the 70s, average age. Women, I believe, are around 80. So let's assume you're going to live to be 80, right? You've got 30 plus years of life left on this earth. Why not maximize it instead of neglecting it and then continuing to deteriorate with health issues later on? Take action now, start to turn it around, and get stronger as you get older. Get healthier as you get older. Like, other people have done it. It is possible to do. Right? We don't have to be a victim. We can take control. And that's what this is all about. So I would encourage you to start now versus putting it off. But that's totally up to you. Let's see. We have another question here. I can't go to the gym too often, barely 2 to 3 times a week. I do home workouts. I will do the other old videos, dumbbell, back, chest, arms, abs. Awesome. Hey, you, as I mentioned before, you can still make great progress doing those home workouts. But if you even go to the gym 2 to 3 times a week, that's enough. Like, you can make amazing progress with 2 to 3 gym workouts a week, assuming that you're doing the right things and you're doing so in a structured fashion with progressive overload. Like, I've got coaching students now that I'm working with personally who they're averaging 2 to 3 workouts a week, and every single week they're getting stronger. They're seeing progress. Like, it's just a linear progression moving up and up because they're training properly, training with a progressive overload fashion. And with 2 to 3 workouts a week, you're giving your body adequate time to rest, recover, and grow between those workouts. So it's not necessarily a bad thing to only work out 2 to 3 times a week. Sometimes you can actually make your best gains, especially strength gains, with a less frequent approach. And I can speak to this from experience, because back in the day when I was younger, like in my teenage and early 20s, that range, I was from the old school mindset that more is better, right? Like, if you work out every single day, 2 to 3 hours a day, well, you're going to get ripped and jacked, and that's the best way to go about it. And I tried to do that. I tried working out every day for 2 to 3 hours a day, and I just burned myself out. And I wasn't making any gains. Like, I was killing myself in the gym and felt exhausted, and like, but just willpower and grit and determination said, hey, don't be a pussy. Keep showing up. Come on, go big or go home, right? No pain, no gain. And kept beating my head against the wall, showing up day after day after day. And it's like, I'm not going anywhere. I'm not making any gains. And finally, when I actually had this kind of conversation with some more experienced bodybuilders who just, talked some sense into me and said, man, you're doing too much. Like, cut your volume back. And this was around the same time when Dorian Yates was winning the Mr. Olympia, and Mike Mentzer and his heavy duty program, the high intensity, lower volume approach was starting to become popular. So a lot of people say, man, you're just doing too much. Like, scale back the volume, scale it back. So I went from training every day, 2+ hours a day, to 3 days a week or every other day. I had workout one day, take the next day off, workout one day, take the next day off. So I always made sure to have a full day of rest in between each workout. And then I started to make gains. Like, that's when I switched to that, my body just started to respond. And I made the best gains ever because I was allowing time to rest, recover, and grow, not just constantly break down and like, I was stimulating and breaking down the muscle, but I never ever give it a chance to rebuild and recover and grow. That's where this whole approach makes a big difference, because just keeping to stimulate, you need to let the full process happen. It's stimulate, rest, recover, grow, then stimulate, rest, recover, grow. If you just keep, stimulate without the recovery and the growth, you're shortchanging your process, and it's wasted effort, because you're putting in all that time, all that energy, and you're not getting any return from it. So that was a big wake-up call for me. When I scaled back, I started to make the best gains ever, and it was a big learning curve for sure, a big eye-opener. So don't be upset if you can only go to the gym 2 to 3 times a week. If you're following the right approach, that can be very productive. All right, so another question. Is it possible to surpass genetics? For example, some people will never grow their biceps no matter how much training they apply. Others simply cannot build calves. What are your thoughts? I don't think you can naturally surpass your genetics. We've seen people try, but you have your genetics. And the thing is, when it comes to building muscle, we really don't know what our genetic potential is until we try. Like, certain genetic traits are pretty obvious, like the color of your skin. Like, we know, like, okay, no matter how much I suntan, I'm never going to be a dark skinned person. I'm never going to be, versus someone who is a dark skinned person, like an African American or someone like that, who gets the suntan. They're going to be way darker than me. I could spend way more time in the sun or in the tanning bed or whatever, but I'm never going to get as dark as they will, based on genetics. So, like, stuff like that sometimes is very obvious, your genetic potential or your height. Like, I'm 5'6". I'm never going to play in the NBA. I don't have it. Like, I don't know anybody in the NBA who's 5'6". Right? It ain't going to happen. So sometimes genetics is very obvious. Like, you could be extreme in height, or, from the NBA giants on one end to midgets on the other end. We could have genetics in color, in terms of, like, you have black people on one end and you have albinos on the other. There's sometimes genetics that's very obvious, but when it comes to building muscle, it's not always obvious. Like, okay, sure, some people are naturally bigger than others, but, like, I'll give you an example. You look at young pictures of Arnold Schwarzenegger, and young pictures of Lou Ferrigno, and young pictures of a lot of pro bodybuilders. Like, when they were kids, they looked like normal kids. There was just skinny kids. But then once they started training, their bodies responded faster, and they made better gains, and they could recover faster. And you just see them start to surpass everybody. And the next thing you know, like, here they are in their late teens, early 20s, and they're more muscular than guys who've been training for 20+ years, right? So they just have that genetics that we don't really see it until they put the work into place, right? Until they start to stimulate the body and then see how fast it can grow. Now, even with people with great genetics, sometimes you will have discrepancies, meaning, like, some people may have big, massive arms and scrawny little chicken leg calves. Other people probably have big calves and skinny arms. That's my problem. I got big calves from my mom, right? My mom always had big calves, and I inherited big calves from my mom. But in proportion, my arms are not as big. Like, the tape measure, I've got bigger calves than I do biceps, whereas most people it's the other way around. So you can't surpass your genetics. That's always going to be the ultimate limiting factor, right? I mean, you can do a lot. You can maximize your genetics, but ultimately, at the end of the day, that's going to be the limiting factor, right? And then when you get into the top levels of sports, whatever sport it happens to be, it's the people who have extremely good genetics and extremely good work ethic, and are also following a well-structured program, and working with, got their nutrition dialed in, their training dialed in, their recovery and all that dialed in. that's the people who are going to be the superstars, you know, the elite of the elite. Sometimes you'll see people with amazing genetic potential, but subpar work ethic, they're not going to maximize their genetic potential. I would much rather see someone with extreme hunger, desire, passion, work ethic, and subpar genetics. I think they could potentially do better than someone with extremely good genetics, but who's lazy, doesn't have that drive, that hunger. Right? It's always nice to see the underdog pushing themselves and, you know, maximizing their genetic potential for what it's worth, than seeing someone who has amazing genetic potential and never fully reaching it because they just don't have the drive and the desire. Right? You know, we see that in the sport of bodybuilding, and of course, every now and then you see the combination of both come together. Like, prime example, Ronnie Coleman in the sport of bodybuilding had incredible genetics and had incredible work ethic, and arguably the most muscular human being that ever walked the face of the earth in terms of bodybuilding, you know, especially at his peak. Right? So, you know, that's when you have the combination. Like, that's like the 1 in a billion, right? You know, that's the, or less than that, right? I mean, that's like super, super rare. But again, you can't surpass your genetics. Like, if you just don't have it in the cards, it's no matter how hard you train or what supplements you take or what PEDs you take, if you don't have the genetic potential, you're not gonna make it to the top of the sport. And we see that a lot, like especially in amateur sports. Like, you see some amateurs, I mean, they're doing everything in their power. They're taking every performance enhancing drug they can get their hands on. They're training like madmen. They're dedicating and sacrificing their lives for their sport. But if they don't have the genetics, like, they're never going to make it to the top. Right? I came to that realization early on in my, well, not early on, after 12 years of competition, I realized I didn't have what it took to become a pro bodybuilder. Right? But before then, I mean, that when I started bodybuilding, like, I was like, I'm going to be the next Mr. Olympia. I'm going to be a world champion. Like, I grew up reading the magazines and reading about all these pro bodybuilders, and I thought, yeah, that's going to be me. And after 12 plus years of competition, I mean, that's how long it took me just to win a local, regional level or local level show. not 12 years of training, 12 years of competition. There was another 5 years of training before I ever did my first competition before that. So 17 years just to win a local level show. And then I go and compete at the regionals and I get my ass kicked. And I was like, yeah, I don't think I got what it takes. You know, I don't think I want. Right? Whereas some guys, you see them go out there and dominate on their very first show. Right? Like, that's the difference in genetics. Like, I remember, prime example is, I know I'm rambling on here, but I just want to share it. I've been training longer and have done more shows than Phil Heath. And I remember when he came on, like, he ended up like just turning pro in the matter of a few shows. And then next thing you know, he goes out and dominates and wins his first 4 pro shows or whatever it was. Like, that's genetics. Because I'm saying, like, I've done more shows and I've been training longer than this guy. I've got more competitive experience on stage than this guy, but here he is. He's an IFBB pro, and I'm still struggling to place on the friggin' Newfoundland provincials. Like, something's wrong here. Genetics. Yeah. So you can't escape your genetics. Just wanted to share that. What else we got there? We got John joining in. Let's see what else. Oh, John, just support. I appreciate that, John. Thank you so much for your support with the chat. Greatly appreciated. All right. Who else we got? Other questions come through before we get ready to clue this up. Lost my spot there then. Because I work at 1 p.m. to 9 p.m. and I try to make time to work out, I learned so much from you, such as appreciate the little things, and something's better than nothing. Good stuff. Those little nuggets, like, I keep repeating them, but hopefully it sinks in. I mean, that can help you in these little in-the-moment decisions, right? Something's better than nothing. You know, like, okay, I don't have time to go to the gym. I don't have time to do a proper workout or whatever, but I can do something. I can do something at home, even when it comes to your nutrition. Okay, I don't have, you know, a well-stocked kitchen at my disposal or something like that. I don't have full control of my food choices, but how can I make it better than it was before? Right? Something's better than nothing. Right? How can I maximize this opportunity so that make small progress, or at the very least minimize the damage, so that when I am back to, an optimal environment, then I can take full advantage of that and maximize my progress. I appreciate you for sharing that. John is asking, wondering, can you tell if you have more slow or fast twitch muscle fibers you have as sorry, I got to repeat that. Wondering, can you tell if you have more slow or fast twitch muscle fibers you have as slow muscle fibers can't lift as much weight? This will become apparent in terms of what you excel at physically. What are you better suited to? Like, are you more of a long distance endurance athlete, or are you more of a high intensity strength and power athlete? What are your natural tendencies? What are you genetically good at, I should say? That's another way to look at it. And this is something I just want to kind of share, like a little side note here. The old school training philosophies, like especially in the old Eastern Bloc countries and stuff, when they were training athletes, like for Olympics and different sports, they would kind of get the kids together and train them to get in their best shape with just general physical preparedness type training. So strength, conditioning, endurance, flexibility, like they would just train them to get in shape. And then the coaches from all the different sports would come in and look at the pool of kids and say, you know what, you've got good genetics to be a wrestler. You got good genetics to be a weightlifter. You got good genetics to be a runner. You got good genetics to be a gymnast. And they would pick the athletes based on their genetics, versus the way a lot of us do, especially in North America, is, hey, I want to be a football player when I grow up. You might have shitty genetics to play football, but because you want to be a football player, that's what you're going to do. Right? So it's nice in that sense when you can say, like, what kind of genetics are you, and have someone who with a more experienced eye to see, like, this is your tendency. Like, based on these physical tests we put you through, you exceed more on the endurance side, or you exceed more on the strength side, or you exceed more on whatever, on these different elements of fitness, because we all have our own genetic tendencies, right? If you may know people who are just naturally strong, like if you want someone to help you move furniture, you probably got a guy in mind, like, hey, right, Bob's like a beast, man. If you want to move a sofa up a flight of stairs, get Bob to help you, right? He's strong as a bear. And then probably someone else that you know of, like, oh, this guy's got really good stamina, or whatever. Like, you'll know people just have these genetic tendencies, and how you know is what you naturally excel at. And then that just becomes more noticeable than if you get involved with sports, because for the most part, if you see like a really good runner, like especially like a marathon runner, they're probably not going to be a great power lifter, just based on their genetics. Like if they're an excellent marathon runner, they're probably a thin, more slow twitch endurance muscle fiber build, versus a power lifter is probably a bigger, stockier, more fast twitch muscle fiber build. Very powerful, very explosive, but got a short fuse. Like that initial burst, but that burst quickly fades. It just doesn't keep going and going. Whereas the endurance guy, okay, he doesn't have a big burst, but he's like the Energizer Bunny and just keeps going and going and going, like nonstop. And then we have people in the middle as well. So, you can kind of tell what your natural tendencies are. And it's interesting. Like, sometimes you'll have combinations of both, but like me looking back over my training history and stuff, I mean, I did take to bodybuilding early on, but I'm kind of thinking, man, if I had prioritized more endurance training, I probably could have done quite well at that, because in recent years, I have switched to doing more endurance training, cycling specifically, and I've actually done quite well with it. And I was just thinking, what if I started, like, back in my early days, instead of prioritizing bodybuilding, I prioritized the endurance training. Maybe I could have been a better endurance athlete than I was a bodybuilder, because I realized I didn't have the genetics to be a pro bodybuilder. Now, maybe I don't have the genetics to be a pro endurance athlete either, but it'd just be interesting. One of those things, like, hey, if I woulda, coulda, shoulda back in time, if I put the same effort into endurance training as I did into bodybuilding competition training, maybe things could have been a lot different, right? Who knows? Right? We can all speculate, but we'll never know unless we get a time machine. All right, who else we got joining in? We got Marcus joining us. Welcome, Mark. Glad to have you tuning in. We've got Chris joining in. Welcome. What do you normally eat for breakfast? I've got, what do you got? um, I've got, what do you normally eat to breakfast? I've got about 50 pounds to lose. Okay. Well, what I eat for breakfast isn't going to help you lose 50 pounds. All right. I just want to stay that up front. Right. If you want help with losing 50 pounds, that's something that we can customize a meal plan for you. And I encourage you, feel free to drop me a line or, tune into our masterclass that we're having next Wednesday. That'll kind of give you some insights as well. But this is something that like we could sit down and have a Zoom call together and really like discuss your situation, your goals, your eating habits, and figure out like how we can optimize what you're currently doing and get you set up on an action plan that's right for you. Because simply blindly following someone else's program isn't necessarily going to be the best program for you, right? You got to start where you're at, right? So what I eat for breakfast isn't necessarily going to be the breakfast to help you lose 50 pounds, but I'll just share what I do. Generally for me, my breakfast is going to vary depending on what I'm doing that day. So if I'm doing, like if I'm going for a bike ride, like I mentioned earlier, if I got a big bike ride planned, I'm going to have myself a high carb breakfast, fairly high calorie breakfast. So again, like let's just say Saturday morning, we got a big bike ride planned. I'm going to eat probably 100 grams of carbs for breakfast minimum. I'm also going to get about 50 grams of protein minimum. And I'm going to make sure that I'm well hydrated. It's like I'm going to eat a very hearty breakfast that morning because I want to have energy to burn for that big bike ride afterwards. Now, if there's nothing planned and it's kind of like either a rest day or just an active recovery day, no big activity, then my carbohydrate intake is going to be lower. Protein intake is still going to be high, but the carbohydrates for me is like the wild card. Those I'm going to bump them up on the days where I'm really active because I want to have the glycogen in the system to use for energy. But on the days that I'm not active, then I'm going to scale that back down, right? And it's, that is your wild card for nutrients. But protein, vegetables, the high nutrient foods, the healthy fats, that stuff stays high all the time. It's the carbohydrates that's the wild card. That's the one that will fluctuate based on activity level. Right? So some sample breakfast foods, like I love eating eggs and omelets for breakfast. That's one of my go-tos for protein. Sometimes it's blender smoothies. If I'm in a bit of a rush or I just don't feel like having eggs or cooking eggs, I might mix up a big protein blender smoothie, have that. Sometimes it's oatmeal with protein powder. Those are some common ones. Sometimes it's high protein pancakes. That's another favorite of mine. Like I got a recipe for a nice high protein pancakes. And if I want a good source of protein, good source of carbohydrates, that's a go-to for sure. But I'm not one of these guys who like, I eat the same thing day in, day out, week in, week out. Like I like to have several different meal options and I'll vary them depending on one, my energy demands for the day, but also what I'm in the mood for. Cause I don't like having myself rigid, like, okay, you got to eat chicken and rice and broccoli for lunch, and you got to have oatmeal and egg whites for breakfast, and you got to have, white fish and a sweet potato and green beans for supper, like, and be locked into this and eat the same damn food for weeks and months on end. Like some people love that. I don't. I like having variety where I can choose different foods and not get bored of the same thing over and over again. So my foods vary a lot, but I always think of the principles. Like, am I getting my protein? Am I getting my veggies? Am I getting my healthy fats in there? And am I getting enough carbohydrates to match my activity level for that day? All right, let's see what else we got there. I'm going to get ready to clue this up because we're gone over the hour. I always promise an hour, but as the regulars know, I go over the hour. Once we get going, I got the gift of gab. Robert saying he takes creatine with breakfast every day. Awesome. I basically do the same thing. I take it after breakfast when I take my vitamins. Nourish to flourish. Is executing a heavy barbell shrug more beneficial to hold it at the top of the shrug for, let's say, 6 to 8 seconds for 8 to 10 reps? Or is it more beneficial to do, say, 10 reps and hold them for 2 seconds? Because I like holding longer and less reps for time under tension. That's a personal preference. And I've done both ways when it comes to shrugs. And I found, it's like 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. You can do the slow cadence, squeeze, hold type of repetitions that you're talking about. But then there's another one where you can just shrug and just keep going, time under tension, and do super high reps, like 20, 30 plus reps or more, and just keep that cadence going. So you're keeping the muscle moving. And with shrugs, you can do higher reps because the range of motion is pretty freaking small. So like, you think of like a squat, how long it takes you to squat from the top to the bottom, or a deadlift or a shoulder press, or any of these big movements where there's a grand distance being traveled with the weight. Shrugs, it's literally inches. That's it. Like, you're a couple, 2 or 3 inches, especially when you're under load. So you can do high reps with shrugs to get the same time under tension. Now, whether you want to do it like slow tempo, low reps, and just squeeze, stretch, or if you want to just pump, try it both ways and see what works best for you. Like, this is something I've actually gone through phases with, where sometimes I'll do the squeeze and hold, like you mentioned, and okay, I get some good stimulation from that. Other times I've changed it up and I've done just pump. I'm going to pump out 30 reps nonstop. It's up and down like a piston. And I found that sometimes like that burns like a SOB, and I get a really good pump, really good muscle stimulation. It's not necessarily right or wrong or good or bad. It's just a different way of going about it. So, you can try it both ways. And if you do have a preference for one or the other, then obviously stick to the one that you feel works the best for you. But I honestly think that this is something that you could cycle between. Like, hey, for the next 6 weeks, I'm going to do my shrugs in a slow tempo squeeze and hold fashion. I'm going to do that for the next 6 weeks. And then after that, I'm going to do another shrug variation, but I'm going to do them in a pumping nonstop fashion for really high reps, 30 plus reps. And again, when you switch to a different style, you'll probably help spur on some unique muscle growth, unique muscle stimulation, and just kind of like spur on some new progress there. And plus, it changes up the workouts, keeps it fun and interesting as well. So it's not just physical stimulation, but it's mental stimulation as well, and that's part of the battle. All right. Mark is saying, long-time student, I'm getting older now and things hurt more. I get stiff and achy. I do stretch and try to move around, but it doesn't seem to always help, and need suggestions. Thank you. Well, Mark, if you want some help with that, feel free to reach out, because there's a lot to unpack there. I mean, like, getting old and stiff, well, that's kind of inevitable. Like, generally speaking, the older you get, there's going to be some wear and tear on the joints and everything else as you get older. But if you want some help and kind of map out an action plan that we can work around, feel free to reach out to me. And in the description below this video, I have my contact information there, my email, as well as a link where you can actually book in for a complimentary coaching call with me. And we can sit down, have a Zoom call, and just discuss your goals, your situation, what it is you're trying to achieve, and see if we can map out an action plan for you. So you're more than welcome to sign up for that. Again, down in the description below this video is the details. We got Ted joining in. Welcome. We've got Sean joining in. How are you? Doing well, my friend. He's got a question. Says, I want to get into training. I don't know where to start. My goal is to bulk up, but I can't afford a personal trainer. What are my other alternatives to get into weight training? We actually discussed this, options to get into weight training on a budget. That was one of the topics we covered in the last episode of our podcast. So if you go check that out, and I have it time-stamped as well, so I would highly recommend that. Check that out, because we did a full section talking about that in our most recent podcast. I think you'll find very helpful. But you know what? There's so much information online these days. Like what you're doing right now, following like these video chats. You can also join us over on the Total Fitness Bodybuilding Facebook group. Like that is a free group you can sign up for, and you get a lot of insights there. Like I don't want money to be the issue. Like, oh, I can't afford it. Poor me. Life sucks. I'm not going to do anything. Like money does not have to be an issue. There's so much that you can do, and there's so much out there now. Like there's more information and more help available than ever before. Like I'm just blown away, because when I started training, like there was no internet. information came so slow, and it was very rare to find information. Like you had to go, actually talk to people who were doing it in person, or you had to get books or magazines or VHS tapes, because there was no DVDs back then either. And information was so scarce and hard to come by. Nowadays, it's the complete opposite. Now we have too much information. So the problem is not enough. It's I don't know what to do with it all. Right? Like I type in how to build muscle into Google, and I get like 10 billion search results. I'm like, okay, where do I start? Or, how do I lose fat? Or what's the best diet? What's the best workout? You type all this stuff into Google and you get 10 billion search results, and like, okay, good luck. Right? That's where it's confusing nowadays, is we're overloaded with so much. So, that's where having someone who's been there, done that, has the experience, can help you sort out what's good for you and what's not good for you. Because quite honestly, a lot of the information that's out there, especially if it's coming from a reputable source, is good information. But who is that information geared for? Like if I was to offer training and nutrition advice for a 50-year-old office worker who wants to lose weight, lower his cholesterol, and improve his health, and just get back in shape so that he can live life to the fullest without having his body holding him back, that's totally different than if I was talking to a 20-year-old who's skinny and wants to pack on muscle and get bigger. Two totally different situations, two totally different training and nutrition programs. And that's going to be totally different than if I was talking to an athlete who's trying to peak for competition. And that competition could vary, and the training would vary depending if that is an endurance athlete trying to peak for an endurance event, or if it's a strength athlete trying to peak for a strength event, or a physique competitor trying to peak for a physique competition. So it's not that it's right, wrong, good, or bad. It's just who is the information and who is this approach geared towards, right? Like if I went and said, okay, I want financial advice, and I went to someone who's a stockbroker, and their specialty is in the stock market, and then I go talk to a real estate agent, and their specialties in the real estate market, and then I go talk to a business consultant, and their specialties in creating businesses. It's not that it's right, wrong, good, or bad. It's like these are totally different avenues for totally different situations. So the same applies with training. It's like, what's right for you, your situation, and where you are. Like, prime example, like you mentioned you wanted to bulk up. That was one of your things. So obviously the advice that's going to apply for someone who's overweight and trying to lose weight isn't going to apply for you. One thing that I will suggest, and I'm going to offer to you, Sean, I have a program. It was an ebook that I put out several years back. It's called Old School Bulking. And it's a full training and nutrition plan to help you pack on lean muscular body weight. If you want a copy of that, just drop me an email. Again, my email is down in the description below this video. Just drop me an email with the words Old School Bulking, and I'll know exactly what you mean, and I'll forward you a copy of that ebook, right? So I'll send it over to you. No charge at all. It's my gift to you, right? If you take the initiative and send me an email, I'll respond back and send you that ebook, and that will outline a training and nutrition plan that you can get started with. All right. With that being said, guys, I'm going to get ready and clue it up. I know there's still a few more questions unanswered there, but time is of the essence, and it's getting late here. But if there's anything that you would like to discuss with me, like maybe I didn't get to your question, or you want to elaborate on anything that we discussed tonight, feel free to reach out to me. Again, drop me an email, drop me a message through Facebook, through Instagram. Either one of those platforms is fine, and we can keep that conversation going. And in the meantime, have yourself a fantastic weekend, and I will talk to you next week. Same time, same place. And one more thing, if you haven't already done so, register for the masterclass. That's happening Wednesday night, November 27th. We're having a masterclass, and you're welcome to join. It's going to lay out an action plan for you to get in shape and maximize the holiday season so that you're ahead of the curve moving into the New Year's versus starting behind the 8 ball and trying to get back in shape in the New Year's after having set yourself back over the holidays. We don't want setbacks. We want a slow progress moving forward. So if you haven't done so already, sign up for that masterclass. And again, the link is in the comments there. And I'm also going to post it down in the show notes as well. All right, I'm going to clue it up. I'll talk to you next week. Take care. Over and out.